Yeah, hey, how y'all doing out there? This is another episode of the SwampTalk. Got a great group of folks here with y'all tonight. Starting with Chris from Madcustomarms. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. And then we got Matt from 2A 3D Print. How's it going?
What's up, man?
And then, of course, can't really have a podcast nowadays without having St. Vinroe on there from JSD.
What's going on, guys?
All right, can we start this off by saying, like, why is it so saints? I'm not a religious guy, right? But like saints are all like St. Matthew's, St. Andrew. Why is Jordan's his last name?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the person that started it.
Just trying to just got to be different, man. Just got to be different.
I guess.
Yeah. Give a couple of shout outs to folks out there. We got Aegis, the sponsor of the podcast out there, giving some thumbs up. And Ron Wayne, good to see you. And Toy Town Inc., I know you've been out there for a little while waiting for the show to start. Glad to see you out there too. But yeah, I wish we had a little bit better topic to be talking about because y'all are good folks to be talking with. But what do y'all think about these rules that they came out with?
Oh, wow.
Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll go first. It doesn't matter to me. I think a lot of it is grandstanding. I think they're trying to distract us in a way from something else that they're trying to push through. It's just like they always do. And when it comes right down to it, my biggest issue is when it comes to these ghost guns. I personally have no use for them. I make 80% in here anyway. And, but because I'm a manufacturer, I have to put all my information on it. So it makes no difference. Even my personal guns, I still mark them. I still put all my information, like my personal information on it. And I just do it just in case the thing gets stolen. It can be identified. But other than that, I really don't see how they're going to regulate it. It just doesn't make any sense to me because it's just parts. How do you regulate just parts?
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what happens. I've been talking to a lot of different people, GOA and industry folks, and it sounds like we're still going to have 80% in some capacity. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that's going to look like or what that's going to be or how we're going to end up doing it. But it's very clear that home-built guns are still a thing, even with this new rule. It's also kind of clear that AR-15s, the way they are today, are the way that they're going to remain in even an 80% form. But there's also a bunch of contradicting language in this rule change. So, I've talked to some lawyers, and of course they always tell you, don't do that, you're going to jail. So that's kind of been the theme of this week, like floating out different ideas. And I was just talking to Rob at GOA, and I said, hey man, what do you think about this? I said, I think it'll work, but I'm sure you're going to tell me that I'm going to jail. And he's like, yeah, don't do that yet. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
that's the thing. No one wants to be that test subject.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no glory without sacrifice, though, man. And unfortunately, we get to where we are with people pushing the boundaries of laws. That's why 80s exist. Somebody was willing to jump in and take the hit and manage to do it without prosecution, or maybe they were prosecuted and we never heard about it. But
right,
it's a thing today.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you look at it based on, just in history alone, I mean, we've always been able to make our own gun for our own personal use forever. We've always been able to make our own firearm. Okay. There's never been any rulings about doing any kind of, as long as you can legally possess a firearm, you can make your own gun legally. And it doesn't say that it had to be 80%. It doesn't say that it had to start from any kind of condition. I mean, if you had the materials and the know-how, you can take it from a block of steel and create your own firearm. And there's nothing that the government can say about it. It's perfectly legal to do that. And so there's just not that many people out there that can. So.
Yeah, and they even mentioned that in the new ruling that they're not banning home building per se. They're still allowing personal built firearms. They're just trying to clarify stuff, but they're clarifying don't really clear much up.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's everything. It just gets so mixed up in the wash that you really don't know where you're going or if you're going or coming. I mean, it's just so crazy right now. So, and I don't even think they know what they want to do. And I think they're trying to figure out a way to control crime. And the problem with it is that they're not controlling the actual crime. They're controlling gun rights. And, okay, they're saying, well, I could actually listen to what Biden was talking about. And he was talking about, they find, a lot of these ghost guns are being found more on the at these crime scenes. And I think that's a little misleading. I don't think that, they may have found it because the person they found had it on them, but it doesn't necessarily mean it was used at the crime scene or they found it at the crime scene. Okay. The other thing is that a criminal, man, most criminals aren't going to take the time to put one of these 80% together. They're just going to go steal one. So, and when it comes right down to it, because one of the things that he had mentioned about these ghost guns is that they're untraceable. Most of the time, any firearm that's used in a crime itself, they're only tracing it back to see if the gun was stolen to begin with. I mean, that's really all the serial number on that gun is for. Is just to trace it back, who built it, and if it was stolen. That's it. That's all they can really do with it.
Serial numbers exist on guns for taxation purposes. That's why they exist. If they can track it back and see, okay, well, it was stolen here, that's just like a bonus. But serial numbers are on guns for taxation purposes.
Yeah.
So and they've never there's not been a single serial number that stopped a crime either. Brooklyn had serial numbers on his gun. Philadelphia, I'm in Pennsylvania. So Philadelphia just busted a ring of, I think it was 13 people that trafficked 400 pistols into the city of Philadelphia. They were all, as far as I know, they were all purchased legally. Nothing illegal happened until they transferred those privately to somebody out of state and those sort of laws. But, there's 400 in one group of people. And we're talking about, 600, whatever the number is, 650 attempted or whatever homicides or suspected homicides or whatever that number is in 5 years. So it's just a silly numbers game. And they try to skew the stats to their favor and to their agenda, but it's just not there. AmmoLand put out an article, I don't know if it was today or yesterday when it was this week, that said an insider, I believe it was the DOJ, said that the numbers that they're using are skewed and they have no record of, these so-called ghost guns showing up at all these different crime scenes. They've interviewed police chiefs all over the country and they say, no, we've never had one. They checked their inventory room at the time of the interview and no, we don't have any, unserialized firearms in our evidence locker. So it's non-existent, the crime stats that they're trying to put out there.
Right. Yeah, and
Go ahead.
I was just going to point out what Gun Doctor had mentioned about their trying to lump in altered serial numbers now to their stats of the ghost guns, and that's already a crime to alter or remove a serial number in the first place.
Well,
and
hell,
like
you
y'all mentioned before, that serial numbers, all that is a bookkeeping thing.
Yeah,
that's where they come from in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. You take that guy in New York that just shot up those people in New York. They show the gun on the news that he was trying to scratch off the serial number on it, and I mean, from what I understand, that gun isn't even legal in New York. So
yeah, and that's another one. It was bought at a store in a state where it was legal to buy it, even though he shouldn't have been able to pass the background check with his background mental health stuff that he had. He still bought it in a store and then took it to a place where it was already illegal for that gun to be there in the first place with a 17-round magazine.
Well, and during Biden's address to the public on Monday, the very brave young woman, I mean, I don't care what she was speaking about. It is pretty brave to get up in front of the entire country and address people, whether you're for guns or against guns. That's pretty brave, whether you're getting paid or not. Her story was a classmate stole his father's gun and brought it to school and shot however many people. But bringing a gun to school and shooting people is a crime. Like it's unfortunately one of those crimes you can't stop until it happens. It's hindsight 2020 type situation, but that could have been a registered gun. That could have been Biden's favorite double barrel shotgun. That could have been anything. It's the intent that has everything to do with everything. It has nothing to do with if it was a ghost gun or not. I mean, intent is a big deal.
Yeah, and that's one thing. No matter how many of the laws you put in there, you're never going to do away with that intent that an evil person has to do. They'll find a way to do it regardless of what the method is going to be.
Right.
And what was you going to say, Jordan?
I was just going to add to what Matt was saying about that shooting and that girl was talking about. I'm fairly certain that incident was with a 1911 that the father built. So if you took it's not these, they want to put a time limit on how quickly or how long it takes to build a firearm. That doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you're building a firearm. But, 1911 is one of the harder platforms to build, out of just parts, let alone an 80% and trying to shave down the rails correctly and decking the top of the frame if that's what you have to do on a particular unit.
Yeah, I mean that's why
barrel seat out. I mean
that's why I did my 320, man, because I was like, all right, cool. This is me dipping my toe into getting into eventually building a 1911, and I mean Jordan was helping me troubleshoot it, and I can't imagine what a 1911 is like. I'm like,
it's terrible.
It's definitely not something that a newcomer is going to find easy or put together in 30 minutes.
Yeah, I actually built a lot of 1911s in here.
Yeah, so you know how long it takes.
And that's one thing I caught the podcast you did with Rogue Banshee, and y'all was talking about that a little bit on there. I don't know if you want to kind of bring it up some on here, where y'all was talking about someone that has done this a bunch, has accumulated the skills to do it. What's the difference of the time that person can do if they can do it in an hour and have access to, all the knowledge of doing it right that first time versus someone that just picked it up, barely knows what a screwdriver is, take them days to do something the same thing? Is penalizing the skill level now part of it?
Right. That's the problem with time, is that, even if you're a machinist and versus the next machinist, you guys have two different skill levels. So, maybe Matt can build a Polymer 80 in, an hour. Maybe it takes me 3. Maybe it takes somebody else 15 minutes. It just all depends on what you're doing, how tight you want everything to fit, or just if you're just trying to get it done quickly, just to have it, to go to the range or whatever. So, you can't really put a time limit or ease of completion, because it's not black and white. 1 + 1 has to equal 2. So if you don't have that kind of wording or language in the law, how do you defend yourself from the law? How do you stay within the law? gray areas are not a good thing when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're like in the new ruling, one of the things that they talk about is having like an 80% receiver and instructions. Well, like I don't like. I mean, like I'm sure almost everybody in here, like, I don't need instructions anymore to like build a gun. Like like if I'm gonna build a gun, like maybe if it's something that I'm not super familiar with, but I don't need, like, if I'm going to build a Glock right now, like, I don't need instructions. Even the SIG, like, taking it apart so many times, like, I don't need instructions for that anymore. So, like, but somebody who's brand new, they need instructions. So if I have an 80%, like a MUP 1 or something like that with no instructions, like, that's not a firearm. But if, Joe Schmo goes and wants to build his first one and he's on YouTube and he's got his tablet and he's watching YouTube and he's got a MUP 1, is that a firearm now? Like, is that like there's no clarity in that,
right? And that's what they're trying to use their opinion on indexing. I don't know if anybody remembers, but EP Armory years ago, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, had a polymer frame AR-15. It had little protrusions where you drilled the 3 holes on the side, and then it had the different colored biscuit, they called it, where the fire control group was on the inside of the AR-15. So ATF one day said, well, that's indexing because it shows you exactly where to drill, because it was a jigless receiver. So they're trying to then use that language and now making jigs indexing, which is absurd. It's a tool. And when does that stop? Like you said, a piece of paper, a video on YouTube or whatever platform. There were jigs, and probably still are, that are just stickers that you could stick on the side. If you line them up just right on the side of an AR-15, you can put a sticker on it and you drill through the opening. And they probably don't work that well. They're probably not that accurate, but it exists. Right. It is something people have done.
Yeah.
AKs have something similar. After you bend it, or if you get a pre-bent one, you can put a template on it and drill through the template. So does that piece of paper constitute a firearm as long as it's with a non-finished receiver? I mean, it's absurd to think that that's the world we're potentially going to be living in here in the next 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, and there's
a jig right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and then
printing is still safe. I mean, that's one of the things that I feel like everybody kind of took away from that. There's a lot of gray area, but it's pretty clear that printing is safe for now. But it's like, okay, well, if they're going to go buy stuff like that, is like an SD card with a file on it, with a roll of filament like loaded into your machine, does that constitute like a firearm? Because like there's like files to print, a Chairman Wan frame, like,
right.
And that's the next step. That might not be now, but they can at least show intent with that as well, which is an issue.
Right.
Yep. And then that goes back to like what we're talking about the instructions and stuff, which that, for me personally, that's what got me into being a content creator, is wanting to do videos on building stuff and how to do this. And then you have places like YouTube and a bunch of the other social media folks cracking down on any kind of instructional type videos and stuff as well. And then now putting it into the ruling where something with instructions and not being clear what constitutes instructions, if that could be any number of the YouTubers or insert name of platform here, people that's doing videos like that like Jordan mentioned on a couple other things that don't even have nothing to do with the company that made the thing. But if someone else comes up with a jig or instructions for that, does that now make that a firearm, even if it didn't have it to begin with?
I was like I said before, how do you regulate it? I mean,
where's the accountability too? Because like YouTube does have instructionals for every. You can learn how to build any kind of gun that you can build. You can learn how to safely shoot up heroin on YouTube. There's all this stuff, but like, why is it on the content creator? That should be on YouTube. Like, they should be responsible for that, for allowing it on their platform. But you'll notice there's zero accountability for them.
Yeah, it's always the individual creator, not the platform that's hosting it. Whereas, on, like, for example, like go back to like the Napster stuff and piracy and things, it was always about who was hosting the files and stuff that they was going after, and not so much the individuals that was accessing that stuff. But now when it comes to the gun stuff, they want to make it about the individual.
Well, I just feel like they should make it more about the criminal themselves and not what the tools used that they're to commit the crime.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. I wish that they would just wake up and realize, which I know that the folks that actually is anti-gun do know this stuff, but like for the regular folks, all this stuff does is it hurts the regular law-abiding people and prevents them from certain things being able to defend themselves. And whenever you have an armed populace that can defend themselves from crime, you're going to have lower crime. Because number one, it's going to deter some of the criminals, knowing like what Rogue Banshee mentioned on his podcast, living in Montana, and same type of thing over here. We have things that is locally known as country justice. I mean, people take care of their own, and when the criminals know, like, for example, going into a city, middle of big urban city somewhere, they know there's not going to be a big chance that someone's going to have a shotgun behind the door or something like that, so they'll be more likely to pick someone to snatch a purse or whatever there versus coming and trying to steal something from a house that don't have no neighbors but a mile away.
Right. Well, I mean, that's just the nature of a criminal. They're always going to prey on the weak.
Yep.
So, and it's like I said earlier. I mean, if a criminal is going to do crime, a gun, not having a gun or having a gun or whatever the case is, it's not going to stop them. It's in their mindset to do the bodily harm to somebody. And it doesn't matter what tool they use to commit that crime; they're gonna do it either way.
And what I found offensive in the another thing that I found offensive actually in the ruling was the fact that the ATF acknowledged that they weren't concerned about the effect that it would have on the economy. Right. I mean, I don't know how many people work for Jordan, but I'm sure if Jordan were to go out of business or something like that, I'm sure multiple families would be affected by that. They're going to hurt my business. They're going to hurt everybody at Polymer 80. They're going to hurt all these families. And you're not concerned about the economy. You're not concerned about those people. That's what it is. It's not the economy you're not concerned about. It's a specific group of people. It's almost like discrimination.
Yeah,
to a degree.
Well, to a degree, it actually is. Yeah, when you point it out like that, and like you said, for them to actually point that out, that is kind of, I can see where that'd be kind of hurtful.
It's just I mean, and we need to start having the because if everybody's going to play the victim card, we need to as well. Because we're a group of people who are like strong-minded individuals and but like we're victims of the government too. I mean, we're discriminated more than any other group.
Oh, yeah.
Well, even like you had mentioned,
you can't even open a business and run a business that's totally legal without being prosecuted or having legislation pushed to close your business down. So if you don't want to bake a cake for somebody because of their sexual orientation or whatever, the government will jump on you and crucify you for that.
Right.
But if you want to, hey, I want to sell these parts that are totally legal. They've been legal since before the country existed. They're like, all right, cool. You can do that until we can figure out a way to screw you out of it.
Yeah.
Even though it's totally legal,
Yeah, and it's kind of like you had mentioned too on the YouTube with all the instructionals on how to do everything, where guns is one of the few things that is literally constitutionally protected, legal, all over. Yeah, there's some states that's more restrictive than others and whatever, but it's still legal nationwide to have guns. But yet you have things like you said, heroin use, and any insert drug use on there, adult stuff, whether it be toys or this and that on there. But yet they want to come after the gun stuff that is completely legal, and all these other things that might be in different gray areas. They don't care about
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is too is like, in Biden's address on Monday, because I love picking that stuff apart, man. But like, he said, what did he say? He said that the firearms industry is the only, and you know what? Let's come back to that comment right there too. The firearms industry is the only industry that's not held accountable. Well, you're talking about, was it Smith & Wesson? Jordan, do you know if Smith & Wesson just settled with the Parkland? Was it
Remington.
Remington. So that's not an industry that was held accountable. That's a company that chose to settle. That's a privately owned company that chose to settle. You have big tobacco, big pharma, the automobile industry, alcohol. All of those four industries kill more people a year than guns, and none of them are ever held accountable.
Right.
We all just go, oh, hey. And there's plenty of money in guns. Everybody knows that. And if the government, if that's what they want, just ask for it. Just ask for it. There's plenty of money in firearms, man. They'll be like, hey, here you go. Just you take that tax dollars and leave us alone, just like they do with those four industries I just mentioned. But they don't want people to have guns. That's the thing.
Right. Yep. They want it themselves, but they don't want the people to have it.
So coming back to that was a concern to me. Is every Home Depot or Lowe's going to be required to have an FFL now? I mean, because it says in the ruling, like basically says that if you want to buy or have these parts, if it's just about having the parts together and it shows intent, then Lowe's and Home Depot and all these other mom and pop hardware stores need to be FFLs, and they need to run background checks.
Right. And all the tools are there. All the drill bits are there. All the milling bits are there. The drill press, the Dremel tool, it's all there. So it's, I think it's impossible to enforce what they've written. But, until we get there, until there's an injunction, until there's senators that have stepped up, I think yesterday, we need more of that to happen. But really, I think at the heart of this, Americans need to be concerned that one man can sign into law and bypass all of the checks and balances we have in this country. I mean, Biden said in his speech that he can't get Congress to do anything. Well, that's the will of the people. Congress is the will of the people, whether you like it or not, whether they actually represent you or not. They typically, hypothetically do, I guess. So the will of the people is to not do this. And he's going to do it anyway. So you got to put yourself in the other position. What if, if the anti-gunners, if Trump was in office, what would the anti-gunners say if he signed a law that Congress wouldn't pass? They'd be freaking out and burning more cities down. So the gun community is probably the most law-abiding community there is. I mean, we're always looking over our shoulder to make sure we're doing everything right. And now they just come in and add a whole list of more people to the felon list. Yeah. So that's the biggest concern I have, is that the government can just essentially do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it says, all right, well, Congress doesn't want to do it, so we're going to do it anyway. That's basically what the ATF said. Right. And we don't need Congress's approval. People are concerned about it becoming law, and then there's the counter argument. Well, the ATF doesn't write law, which is true, but they're also acknowledging we don't need to write law. This is what it is, and that's concerning.
Yeah. When the people that is supposed to enforce the rules is making the rules themselves, and however they see fit, it's like you mentioned, it takes away that whole checks and balance system that was in there in the first place, and it just makes it into what the whole country was started on fighting in the first place, is just a monarchy. When one person just makes all the rules whatever way they want, and you don't want to go, or you don't want to follow that, then
looking at it like that too, like Congress should hold the ATF responsible. They should hold them accountable. They should say, hey, well, we said no, you did it anyway. Guess what? Now we have an issue.
And it's even though it's not necessarily actual law, it still carries real penalties to it. And it ain't stuff that's just like a slap on the wrist. It's all felonies. It's just what matter of felony it's going to be.
Well, and how do you prosecute somebody for breaking a law that's not a law? like, how do you rule on that as a judge, or like, how do you represent that as a prosecutor or a defense attorney? There's like, well, this isn't a law, but the ATF said you broke the law.
Yeah. That's another thing that's just like don't make sense.
Well, I think that's kind of. It's funny you bring that up, because I was watching something a couple days ago about how they were doing something in Washington with the what's those oh my God, the damn oil the solvent traps. All right, just handmade or suppressors that are uncut. They were talking about having some kind of. There was a lawyer on there talking about this paperwork that he got from the ATF, talking about how the company that was making them had got shut down, and they're now going after all of the people who bought these solvent traps, and now they have to break it down into the people who bought the traps and didn't do anything with it, and then break it down to the people who bought them, and then they actually did turn them into something without any paperwork or anything. And then the third group was the people who actually did file a Form 1 for it and then make it into a legal suppressor. And what it come down to is that the company in itself, and the final verdict to it all is that every single person who bought one had to turn it all in. Because what happened is that the company was supposed to register every single one of them before selling them as I guess you could say, a potential NFA item. And so even the ones that had filled out the paperwork and did it legally, they have to turn them in. And so that's what I'm saying. I mean, how are they going to regulate it? Because if it comes right down to it, and let's say Jordan, who makes 80%, and Matt, you make 3D printed pieces, right?
Yeah, nothing guns, no guns.
Oh, okay. But okay, so
we do not sell.
Okay, well, but let's go back. Let's go back to like with Jordan. He makes 80% items, and when it comes right down to it, what it sounds like to me is that they're going. The only way they could regulate it is to have him put all of his information on it, and then just not cut it out, but give it a serial number. Well, by that time, it's a registered gun. So it doesn't make sense, because it's still not a gun. It's still not something that you could physically just put all the parts into to make it shoot readily available. You have to do something to it to make it work. And so I don't understand how they're going to regulate it. So,
yeah, I mean, we had some ATF interactions with the build classes that we were doing, and it became like the question that Rob Pincus had brought up was, okay, well, at what point, because you're not allowed to drill or cut any tabs for anybody, right? But it's right. Like, okay, cool. Well, like, at what point does this become a gun? And the answer basically was when all the parts fit into it. Okay, well, when you have a factory polymer 80, you can't get the rails into it. You can get the trigger. You can get the trigger assembly in, I think, right?
Yeah. Right.
But you can't get the rails in. So it's like, all right, cool. Like, that's not a gun. That's by their standards. And if I'm gonna pay for something and 4473 it, I'm gonna pick a Glock frame every day.
Yeah, right.
Every time, dude. Like, I mean, I love polymer 80s, don't get me wrong, but I love them for what they are.
Yeah.
I love them for the polymer that they use, or
we were talking about.
I mean, as somebody who does grip work, I can do all that myself. Like,
yep. We were talking about 1911s earlier. All right, there is a 1911 frame. It's uncut. I mean, it's there, but there's not much there, and it isn't even the right thickness. So it's too thick, actually. Okay, this one is almost cut down to the thickness that it needs to be. It's got some of the holes in it, but it doesn't have the rails in it. Okay, so at what point does it become a firearm between this one and this one? because neither one of them will hold any parts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the rule now on a 1911 would be the rails and the sear and the hammer pinholes is what makes that not a firearm. But in the future, who knows? I don't know. The ruling is too vague for me to have an actual direct path to the future of what I think is going to happen. And I've talked to countless people, like I said, industry people and lawyers and customers and guys in our shop. And it's like, we're all coming up with different ideas and this scenario and that scenario, but none of us really know. It's just not clear. I don't know how you can write laws like that. So,
dude, I like that, man.
Fort Bend always bringing the fire.
All right, so check me out though. My buddy just texted me this, and I just stocked up. So I'm just gonna drop it for everybody else, people who are watching this. Battlehawk Armory has tool ammo right now, 1,000 rounds for $297. So it's zinc plated 9mm, but I mean it's $297 for 1,000 rounds. That's pretty solid. So
yeah, that's a good one.
I have no connection to them or anything like that, but my buddy just texted me that. So if anybody
where was that at?
Cheap ass ammo, where was it? Battlehawk Armory. I never heard of them before.
Probably fake.
Jordan's about to order like 30,000 rounds.
But yeah, going back to where you do the 3D print and stuff, you make some tooling accessories per se, not even quite jigs or whatever, with these rulings and stuff about the instructions or jigs or stuff like that. Where's something like that come into play?
Yeah, so this thing right here, this I made 2 videos for this. I made like the prototype video, and then like I made like a second video on how to use it like properly, like the and it's pretty basic and stuff like that. But I had both of the videos removed because it was showing people how to build guns. I was like, all right, well, this is like just a piece of plastic with 2 holes in it. I'll just do the same video and use a 2x4, and people can do with it what they want. But like, does this constitute a jig? I mean, like, you could use this for drilling a straight hole in anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, the first time that I seen them laying on the table, I didn't even pay no attention because I thought they was just some kind of 3D printed flowers that people was like playing with or giving out. So same thing, like you said, it's far from being a jig per se, other than the fact that you put a drill bit in the hole.
Yeah, the fact that they mention conspiracy, how people can be charged with conspiracy or something like that should be concerning to everybody. I know the 3D printing community like is safe, good to go for right now, but I mean conspiracy is a scary thing, man. I mean, you could just be, like your average designer who just likes designing guns, man. And then like the government can be like, hey, we're going to nail you with conspiracy. That's all it takes. They can be like, hey, right. A criminal downloaded your file and printed one and we caught him with it. He wasn't supposed to have a gun. We believe that you were conspiring with that guy. Next thing you know, they have access to your phone records, email records, your Instagram, Facebook, all these messages. And now they're going through all your shit. So, I mean, that's a scary thing, man. Like right when I saw that, I was like, oh, cringe.
Well, doesn't that kind of fall under intent or something? I mean, because it's not like you planned for somebody to do bad with your stuff. It's just, but they're going to charge you for it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the other thing. Going back to, like you mentioned, say a criminal doing that, whatever, assuming this criminal has already done stuff before, they would already be committing a crime in the first place, having any kind of gun, whether it's a home-built gun, a stolen gun, or whatever the case is. There's already laws on the books that's saying they're breaking the law in the first place. But criminals don't care about the law by definition because they're breaking the law in the first place.
Right. And in most cases, they're not going to follow the law anyway.
Yeah, they're going to do what they want to do, regardless of how many rules say they can't, and they'll do it in whatever way they can to whatever they have available to them.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this documentary a few years ago. I wonder if it's still out there because I'd love to rewatch it. But it was about a gentleman in like some South American country, and he was making like factory clone 1911s, man. Like they were like stupid nice, you know, and like they looked just like they came out of factory, you know, and like he had them fake branded, like whatever, you know, whatever company they were at the time, you know, and I mean, like those are by definition ghost guns. Well, I mean, if those come into the country, that's already a felony, you know, like that's, you know, So, I mean, if you make one of those and they're manufacturing those in like Guatemala or like Chile or something, and they're just making them with the numbers looking like they're scratched off, like, you know, so it's, I mean, like
well, if they're made in another country, they're going to have to pay import tax and all that shit. So if they don't do that,
assuming that they're doing it legally,
right? Assuming they're doing it legally. So, but they're probably not.
But like, you know, like it just, you know, it shows intent. Like there's all these different, and there's always gonna be, you know, and that's why I love the printing community. That's what kind of gripes me too when like you don't see a lot of innovation. Like you'll just see like copy and paste type stuff. People like take an idea and then they'll just like tweak it like a little bit, which is fine. That's totally fine. But like I like seeing the innovation. But there's so many creative people in the printing industry. Like that's what I love. Like the debit card thing, you know, like the little chip everybody's got in their debit card now. That was out for like 2 days before criminals figured out how to beat that. They were like, all right, cool, man. Like, we can get your numbers off of that still, you know, like, so there's always going to be some criminal market. Like, I mean, like, let's be honest, dude, there's as many smart criminals as smart non-criminals. Like and sometimes they're the same people, you know? So,
it just comes down to circumstances.
Yeah. You know, because I mean, like everybody in this chat would kill somebody to defend their family. That might not be a crime, but that would make us all killers at some point, right? You know, it's just like, at what point do you become that person? You know, so you know, and nobody wants. Now, I would like to think that nobody in this chat wants to do harm to anybody, but you know, if it comes down to it and push comes to shove, you know, it will happen, and it goes the same with crime, man. You know. Some people become criminals out of necessity. They're like, you know, like, I mean, like it happens in inner cities. People start selling drugs for their families and shit. You know what I mean? I don't agree with that, but it does happen. They're like, this is the only job I can get that'll pay my bills. You know? Right.
And then even then, at least they are trying to make some kind of effort instead of depending on the government for a check somewheres.
I say it all the time, man. I might not like your hustle, but you know what? I'll still give you credit, man. If you're trying to pay your bills, I mean, like, you know, I mean, like we all got to do it,
right?
You know. But I think that, you know, especially if like I mean, it's just so gray. It's hard to talk about it. There's been like a million YouTube videos about it. People saying, "Oh, yeah, see, you know what? That might be the video that I'm talking about. It might have been an old Vice." But
there's a
National
Geographic.
I was going to say there's a National Geographic and Vice one that both similar to what you were saying. Both of them,
but, you know, like
kind of doing them in the backyard. I don't know how many
frames Polymer 80 makes. I'm assuming it's in like the hundreds of thousands. You know what I mean? Like I'm assuming their injection molds are like not to fuck around with. You know what I mean? There's so many of them out there. So like, if it's cool and it's like, yeah, they don't need numbers. If you built it yourself and they're just going to cut it off like at the wound and be like, we're going to make Polymer 80 do this. Like you're already behind the game, man. Like, you know what I mean? There's, you know.
Yeah. There's millions of 80% that have been built over the years. I mean, it's been going on since, you know, my research early on, I think puts us back into like the 70s for like the first kind of sort of 80%, you know, they didn't call it that back then or whatever, but you know, they've been really popular the last 10 years or so whenever I got into it, but you know, it's really progressed. And so it's been out for decades. There's millions of these things out there. They have no idea how many are out there. It'd blow their mind if they actually knew, I guess. But you know, they're out there. If there was a problem with them, we would know. If they're actually the weapon of choice for criminals, as some individual would like to say, you would know about it. They're not.
Well, that's the thing. I think what stemmed a lot of this, or you know, was the fact that it can be 3D printed, and anybody can pretty much buy a 3D printer, even a cheap 3D printer. And you know, they've seen I don't know, YouTube videos of people who make these 3D printed guns, and they may not work very good, but
they're not even. Well, if you went to the makers match, you'd see that that's not true though, because those guys ran the shit out of those things, dude. It's like ridiculous, like. But they're not even concerned about right now. They're not even concerned. They're like, all right, let's deal with the 80s. Like, we don't care about the printed guns and the FGC 9s and people learning how to rifle barrels in their bathrooms and all that shit. They don't even care.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's one thing that really surprised me. And I was glad that the makers match was a thing, because I wouldn't have been aware of it if it wasn't for that. First time showing up there, kind of like what you mentioned before, the huge diversity and ingenuity that comes from home built designs and comparing things and making iterations and expanding on that and coming up with new things that you just straight up don't see from factory companies. I mean, yeah, you have a few things like Caltech and stuff like that put off the wall stuff out there actually produced, but for the most part, there's not a whole lot of innovation from your main, big name manufacturers, but you can do whatever you want when you're doing it yourself. So you see all kinds of stuff when it comes to like the home built design.
Well, and the thing about printing and like printed guns and that community too is that it's like having a team of individually motivated people all working on the same thing. Because all it takes is one person to make a Glock frame, right? Let's just use Glock for an example. Like, they 3D printed Glock frame. Now you have people like Mr. Snow over here putting a friggin' taser on the front of it, and like you have friggin', I don't know who the original designer was. It wasn't Chairman Wan, but like you have Chairman Wan like making a bong Glock and all this stuff. But you have all these people who think differently, all innovating off of this platform, and like when they do things like that at like. And Jordan might know a little bit more about this than I do, but like when they do things at like Smith & Wesson or Glock, like some dude walks into a room and he's like, hey, we want this gun to be ambidextrous now. So you just have everybody working on that. This is like all these different free thinkers all on their computers in Fusion 360 or SolidWorks in the middle of the goddamn night tweaking off a Red Bull or coffee and like designing shit,
Yeah.
So it accelerates the innovation and like the design a lot quicker than it would at some place like Glock or Smith & Wesson or SIG. I mean, there's a like what's an AUG go for? I can't remember, but there's an AUG in beta now. We were just talking about this. Those are like $3,000-$4,000, aren't they?
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, there's one coming out right now, and the kit's like $400, dude. You're gonna have everybody rocking bullpups, dude, and I hate bullpups.
Right, I do too, but I just bought 3 of them.
Yeah, I was like, all right, cool, man. Like, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I don't really like these either. Maybe I'll make one, and like, maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can now have this gun that you saw in like GoldenEye or something like that for under $500, dude, like for the sake of a couple people's time, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned about how like the 3D printing specifically having people like you're basically internet based. So you have countless number of folks that can literally be working on that same thing at the same time, even whereas versus like a company, even if you have a team of say 5-10 people, engineers or whatever the case is, like you said, working on this one thing, make these controls ambidextrous. They could already put out 5 different designs between the folks that's working together and basically taking like cloud-based stuff to like design and manufacturing.
Yeah.
For tech folks out there anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I want to give him a shout out. I don't know if So, and this was an interesting thing because somebody I had to actually kind of put somebody in their place because they were talking about this grip right here. Anybody? I know Jordan's probably familiar with this. You familiar with this grip? So it's a 26 frame with a 33 round flush mag. and somebody had said something about it. I'm like, no, the first one of those was made out of OEM Glock frames. It's probably like the only example where it actually was like OEM before it was printed, which is like stupid impressive. So shout out to Peter Roos for that one.
Yeah.
You know, at Battlecock Tactical, because that's just like stupid ridiculous. And the fact that he did that before somebody with a printer is like ridiculous.
Yeah, and then same thing. You have stuff like that there doesn't have to be a reason or an actual function for it. I mean, how many like you mentioned the Bong Glock and stuff like this? How many 3D printed designs are just because
Right.
is not an actual like coming up with it for this feature or that feature like you would say a production model.
Yeah, and they can put it out without any, recourse to how much it's going to cost to create a mold and, all that sort of stuff. They just spend their time and click the button, so it's fun. They got a bunch of fun, wild stuff. And, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. These guys are really making some cool things.
Yeah, and then all the different colors and stuff like that
Right.
too that you can do from the get-go, even if you ain't necessarily know how or very good at like painting and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you got all these grown-ass men like over here like painting their textbooks.
Right.
And, like, they're like, oh yeah, I had to go into my wife's crafting kit to get her scissors, but they make it seem like it's this big, nasty, nefarious thing. But like, I mean, every time me and Jordan go out to dinner, dude, we're like pizza and ice cream, dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like little kid shit. Everyone's like, oh yes, they're sitting there plotting. It's like,
Right.
no, man, we're just like having a birthday party here.
Right.
Yep.
It's not a nefarious thing, man. It's actually really, really, really funny.
Yeah, it's like the men's knitting club.
Yeah. We rented a house for NRA coming up next month, and they're like, oh, we have all these rules and quiet time and, this and that. You can't have all these people over. You can't have parties. I'm like, lady, listen, the last time we were all together, we went to get ice cream and pizza at this pizza shop, and, we're at home at 8:00.
Yeah, we're like
and walked around listening to like the haunted tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a big group of kids, man. It's just a big group of kids,
That can clean up after themselves and take care of themselves.
Sometimes, man. Sometimes we clean up after ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's it's weird to that they make it seem like it's so criminal, because I mean it's really not, dude. I mean, like, we're all family men. I mean, most of us are family men. We're just guys who just like guns, man. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
Yeah, that's the
golf.
thing that makes me so mad. Yeah, that makes me so mad about the way that they're like trying to make it seem like criminals is the only one doing this. And really, like we've mentioned quite a few times on the show, I very highly doubt that there's many criminals out there taking the time to be building stuff in the first place versus the vast number of people that actually do this as a hobby in all walks of life. You have, the budget-minded folks versus, high-end, big money folks that can spend the money and have meteorite this and diamond this and engraved and gold-plated this and pick and choose what they want for their build that they put together with their own two hands.
Well, I think that's a sense of pride that each individual possesses when they go to put together an 80% or something from scratch. And I just don't see a criminal taking that much pride into something that he is most likely going to lose, throw away, or get confiscated.
Yeah, well, also too that brings up a really good analogy. How many folks that have took the time to actually rebuild or fix up a vehicle, whether it's their first time with their dad or uncle or whoever, even later on in life, that's going to take a lot more care of that vehicle that they had their hands on and know in and out than one that they just went and bought from the dealer or whatever, or same type of thing. Be able to know if something's up. Oh, I already know how to fix that.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's just a sense of pride, and I just don't see criminals having that kind of pride in themselves to be able to create something like that and then just haphazardly throw it out. I just don't see it.
I haven't seen a piece of legislation in my entire life, let alone since I've been in the industry, that's actually stopped crime.
Right. Exactly.
Make it seem like you wear an S on your chest by signing these bills or changing the rules and stuff like that. Well, there's still cheaters, like, I mean, when you make rules, like, there's cheaters, you know what I mean? And there's always going to be that. So, people who want to murder somebody are going to murder somebody, like, whether it's with, a knife, rope, and it just sounds repetitive because we're always saying this, but that's what it is. It has nothing to do with what you use,
And of course,
Well, and
the
also-
the anti-gunners don't want to hear that. They don't, for some reason, they think that if all the guns are gone, that all the crime will stop. And that's simply not the case.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Australia and look at that situation right there. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have guns, So, I mean,
Well, and there's also plenty more damaging ways that someone that has evil intent could cause damage than by using a gun. Even one that has a huge 100-round drum that's so evil and whatever. I mean, look back at what you can do with bags of fertilizer, driving a U-Haul truck through a crowded street. I mean, there's lots of other ways that someone that is intent on causing harm to folks just because that's what they got their mindset on. It don't matter what they can get their hands on. They're going to do whatever that act is.
yeah, my biggest concern with the legislation is, like, well, I don't want to say legislation because it's not legislation, but everybody, I feel like everybody's all up in arms. And again, this is just my opinion. Like, people can crucify me for it if they want, but, like, I'm not necessarily so concerned about, like, our rights as I am, like, the direct people in my circle being affected, like people who are, like, going to have to, even, like, just the people that I've spoke to, and they're like, oh, well, we're just going to start building full guns. They're like, maybe we sell kits now. We're just going to start building full guns. It's like, all right, cool. But you still have to, like, go out of your way and potentially spend millions of dollars to make that transition. That's concerning to me because, like, these people have built a brand. I mean, JSD is a household brand in 80s now. And, like, there's plenty of other brands like that. And, like, all these people now are going to have to change their business model, or at least try and have a backup plan for whatever happens. And that affects them as people. Like, we're always going to have guns, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to take them all, like, and I'm not going to give, like, the come and take it spiel, because that's not fucking how it is, man. But, like, we're always going to have guns. We're all stubborn as hell, dude. Like, and if there's a will, there's a way, especially with 3D printers, dude. Like, you'll always have them. But, like, I'm concerned about, like, all the people that I know. And if I'm feeling that way, I'm sure there's other people who feel that way as well.
Well, also, too, on top of that, not just the JSD supplies and polymer 80s and, insert name here. You have countless numbers of small mom and pop shops that have come up putting out little boutique 80% and stuff like that, over the last, like JSD mentioned, 10 years or so, that it's been really, really popular. Them littler shops ain't going to be able to have the finances to do what it takes to switch over to be making actual guns and just,
I mean, just the people, and I don't know who does it, but just the company who makes polymer 80s jig molds, you're telling me that company's not going to feel that if they have to stop making those?
Right.
You're like, come on, like, let's be honest, guy, like, and that affects, like, the women and men in the shipping department, the guys who sell them their plastic bags that the jigs go in and seal them up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the little bags, the people who make pins, dude, you know what I mean? Like, that affects all of those people.
It's a lot farther reaching than just a jig or a frame.
Right. I mean, I had that conversation the other day. I've had it before. If JSD gets shut off tomorrow, it affects 15 people right now today that we have that work there through the week. It affects hundreds of other people indirectly that work for different suppliers that we have, different machine shops that we utilize. Even steel manufacturers and steel mills. For our slides, we're cranking out enough that we run whole batches of steel, whole runs of steel at these mills that we have to contract out, 6 months in advance and that kind of thing. So, those guys are going to be affected by it negatively. So and that's just me. That's just JSD Supply, let alone MDX and you and other guys that are doing a similar thing. I mean, there's tens of thousands of people that are going to be indirectly affected negatively by this. So
I mean, the companies that make P80s rails, man, you know what I mean? I know they had 3 machine shops making those for them at one point. I don't know what it's like now, but I mean, yeah. And those aren't even people like in the firearms industry, man. They're just like, we get a blueprint, we quote this job, and then we get the contract, and then we make them for you. Like, they don't care what they're for.
Yeah. I'm actually glad y'all brought that up, because that was one of the final points I was wanting to touch on, is the folks that's getting affected on this that ain't got nothing to do with the gun industry. People that, like you said, making parts or making contracted out to specific companies and stuff like that. And same type of thing. I know Jordan mentioned it again on Rogue Banshee's channel about machine shops and stuff like that. If these rules can, be turned the way that they're trying to, if they take the most strict looking at it, are there anybody with them machine shops and stuff like that doing any kind of work on that now going to have to automatically have an FFL to be able to work on it, even if they primarily machine rotors for cars or something, just because they, might make a piece that could go into a parts kit, or they might make, like you said, a rail that could go with a 80% kit.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was talking about before with that company that was in Washington, where where the company itself just made the solvent traps. They weren't like a suppressor. They didn't have the through holes in them, but because they were what the ATF considered parts to a suppressor, they manufactured NFA items without regulation.
Yeah, one of the things that I got out of the new rules too was that they might even not be saying, hey, we're not gonna take polymer 80s from you, but you know what, they're damn sure, and Chris might be able to weigh on this a little bit more than I will, but they're gonna make damn sure that a lot of FFLs don't want to fucking touch them.
Yeah,
they're gonna be like, all right, cool, man. Like, you want stippling done, you want Cerakote done. It's a finished 80%. Nope, we're not taking it. We're just not gonna do it. And that's what they'll do. They'll just say, hey, we don't want to touch it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that I even deal with to this day. Now, when somebody comes in here and they want me to work on their gun that they, their P80 that they put together, and I will help them, because what will happen is they'll put it together and they can't get it to work right, and so they'll bring it in here, and then we'll go ahead and diagnose it, and see they either didn't cut enough off of it, or it's just too tight or something like that, and so we'll mess around with it for a little bit. But yes, it does bother me to know that, okay, technically I cannot build this gun for them, all right, but they've already built the gun. I'm just doing gunsmithing work. Now, it doesn't have a serial number on it. It doesn't have a name on it. So where do I fall at in the whole scheme of things by helping them get it running?
Yeah. So there's a gun shop near me, and I was having a discussion like last year with the owner, and I don't necessarily, I try not to go in there anymore. Like, they're good people, don't get me wrong, but like, I try to like support the shops that I know are like, kind of like good for the cause and stuff like that. So a couple of years ago, somebody came in who was like 18 years old, bought a shotgun, his friend ended up getting caught with it, had it in his room or something like that. And he got caught with it, and the police got involved. He didn't commit any crimes. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't like hurt anybody, but it came back on his shop. So now they only sell long guns and stuff to you if you're 21. It's totally legal here to have them if you're 18, but it's just a choice that shop makes. Like, and if people don't think it's going to be the same thing with 80s like that, then they're just, you're just completely oblivious to it, because shops are gonna be like, dude, we don't want to do paperwork on them. We don't want anything to do with them.
Well, and Chris, you don't want to mark up somebody's P80 or any other home built firearm that comes in with your FFL or gunsmithing number. That doesn't make any sense. You had nothing to do with that other than logging it in and doing the work that you were paid to do, or whatever the situation is. It doesn't make sense to have, I'm an FFL also, so I don't want my FFL numbers associated to somebody's gun that I didn't actually make. Can somebody sue me? What if the gun blows up that I didn't have anything to do with? I never sold it. I didn't design it. The parts aren't even mine, but my FFL number now is on there with a number. And so the gun blows up. Who are they going to sue? The insurance companies don't care. They'll try. They'll try to sue me. My number.
And the marking plates, like ARs are a little bit different, but the marking plates on a polymer 80 frame are only about this long. There's a standard for height and depth on those plates, right? So say I go to mom and pop shop down the road and they take my frame in to do something. Say that shop goes out of business. Now I have to go down the road and, God forbid, I'm having like the worst build experience of my life, and I got to bring it into them and have them look at it, or I want to have it painted or something. Now they have to put it on it. How much information do you think you can get on this little ass plate?
Yeah, not enough.
The plate is typically designed for the serial number. I mean, I don't know how you would do it on the side of the frame, the name and everything, but
yeah, I guess that's right. Yeah, you could do that.
I guess you could burn it in. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you'd have to laser engrave it in there somehow. So
yeah.
I think ATF standards somewhere say it needs to be in metal, though.
Well, the name on the serial number needs to be on a surface that can't easily be removed.
Yeah.
Okay. That plate that's on that frame is designed typically for the serial number. The name on it can be anywhere on the gun or on the frame.
Yeah, and gunsmiths have always been able to legally work on home-built guns. Yeah, that's true. People do it all the time.
They usually don't want to.
Yeah, you know what? And I see that all the time in framework, man. Like, there's guys who just, they either didn't get a lot of clarity, or they just never asked their local agent or anything like that. But they're like, we don't take in finished polymer 80s. Like, I know Danger Close Armament, they stopped doing it. They stopped doing it just because they didn't want the headache. Like, those guys do awesome grip work, but they were like, we just don't want it. We just don't want the headache. Because you can log it into your books as like no serial number, and and all, you can do it, but like they're just gonna make it so people don't want to touch them.
Well, what it come down to me is that I have a lot of customers that come in that they have their PA built frames, and whatever happens, they mess something up and they can't seem to get the thing to work right. And it would have been a whole lot easier for me to just do it myself, because at the time of building the gun, I might see something that I need to address right then and there. Well, the person who's putting it together has probably never put one together before. They don't know what they're looking at, don't much less know what they're looking for. So therefore they miss that step, and then they just keep right on going. And next thing you know, when they finally get everything together, it doesn't want to work right. And so by the time that comes to me, it's so messed up,
right,
that I will spend more time trying to make it work than it would have been to just have the guy order a whole new kit and then just start the whole damn thing over again. Because it just isn't worth it anymore. It's just gotten to that point where it's really just not worth taking the time to mess with it to begin with. And it's not that I can't legally do it. I just don't want to anymore.
Yep, that's one thing. That there's a lot of shops out there already that didn't want to, because of that non-specified that you can or can't or whatever. And then the way that the regulations came out now, like what Putang mentioned, where you happen to mark it with your own information and actually digits out of your FFL number on that with the serial number, regardless of what work you did on it. If you take it in overnight to where you got to check it in, like say, for example, someone wanted something painted or they wanted something stippled on it. They didn't, not even looking for repair work done, but now it's got to have that information engraved in it. And like Jordan says, now that's something that you didn't do any work to it at all except cosmetics.
Right.
But now it's got your information engraved on it, including information about your FFL number, literally tracing back to you.
Yeah, now you assume responsibility.
Right.
And so that's gonna just make that many more FFLs that might have been working on them before just shy away from it that much more. Like you said, because there's a lot of them they already are working on it. Like you said, it ends up being to where it might be more of a hassle for for someone that's actually got a lot of work or get a lot of backlog and stuff like that. Something that you don't know, you have to take that time to look it over in the first place to see what they did before you can even get to what the work you was gonna do. And that time right there for the just looking it over cuts into the time you could have been doing to fix it.
Well, and so I'm in Rhode Island. For people who are watching who don't know, I'm in Rhode Island. There's about a billion different gun shops, all within a 30 by 40 square size of the state, right? And even before any of this legislation, like years ago, like I was like trying to get people into building, like into like just like that the custom gun industry, because I'm like, like they're like, oh well, if someone buys a P80 from me, it's deterring them from buying like a Glock from me or buying another gun. Well, the markup on a Glock is like $75, man. Like, let's be honest here. Like, there's
max.
Yeah, like, dude, like you're not getting rich off it, dude. Especially if like somebody like me comes in, I'm like, dude, I'll give you $50 less than you're asking for that, and you're probably gonna take it. Like, you're making like $40 on that gun. Whereas like when you're like, hey, we offer custom slides, you can buy a lower parts kit, you can buy all these build kit things, and you're making a percentage off every one of those items. But no shop around here has been open to that idea. They all they all just look super simple-minded, like, oh, it hurts my business because I'm not selling a gun, So we already didn't have the support locally for ghost guns or 80s or anything like that.
It's funny you say that because I don't even sell guns. I'm not a retail store. I am strictly a gunsmithing custom shop.
Yeah,
and I'm not a retail store, so I do build my own guns and I sell those to the general public. But I don't buy I don't buy like an inventory and bring it in here and sell it. So I mean, there's more money in parts than there is in guns. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, and that's another thing too. From the average Joe that's not in the gun industry isn't aware of that fact that there's almost no markup. As far from the business owner side, there's not a lot of profit being made selling guns,
Right.
Yeah. It's not like, say, mattresses or TVs or something like that, where you actually have a legitimate wholesale cost where you have, your profit margin already set from them with their suggested retail price. It ain't the same thing with guns. That margin is very little.
Right.
But yeah, I guess we've been going for over an hour already, and we've touched all the topics that I was hoping to get and then some. So I think I'll go around the room, and if any of y'all have any final thoughts you'd like to mention, and tell the folks where they can find you to follow up with y'all. And I want to take the time to thank all y'all for coming on the show. Appreciate it, and y'all are welcome back anytime. We'll start off with Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Baker with Madcustomarms. You can find me on Instagram at Madcustomarms, Facebook at Madcustomarms. I don't have a web page or anything like that. I do a lot of gunsmithing, custom firearms builds, things like that. But anyway, thank you for viewing, and hope to see you again next time.
Awesome. And then we'll take it to Matt.
2A3D print on Facebook or Instagram. I'm trying to get off Facebook, so on Instagram or 2A3dprint.com.
Nice and easy. And then last but certainly not least, we got Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan, JSD Supply, jsdsupply.com, Instagram, Facebook, and support GOA or FPC, any of those groups that are standing up for our rights here. contact your senators and Congress people and let them know that you oppose this rule, and we need to get it headed on out so we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. That's the main thing, is not being complacent and just letting them get away with it. That one thing you had mentioned too, I think they said that this had the most comments of any proposed ruling that has been come out, and that's from folks like us getting the word out and people
Right.
actually, speaking up and not just standing idly by.
Yep.
Yeah. And shout out PR Triggers, man. They don't even have social media yet.
It's coming pretty soon.
That's definitely something to be looking into. Was one of the highlights from my visit to the gathering, being able to actually check that out. And on that note, y'all take it easy and y'all be good. We'll be back again next week, 7 p.m.
All right. Take care.
See ya.